Good afternoon to those joining us in North America, and good evening to our viewers in Afghanistan and around the world. My name is Damon Wilson, and I'm Executive Vice President at the Atlantic Council. I want to give a special thanks to all of you who are joining us today, as we have to admit that we're all a bit distracted and distressed about the state of our own democracy here in the United States. It's been a tough day in Washington after we witnessed the horror of an attack on our Capitol, incited by rhetoric beyond the bounds. But as we've discussed with our Atlantic Council community, it's not enough to simply condemn dangerous and illegal violence and the responsibility that triggered it. Rather, this painful event should prompt us to redouble our efforts within the United States and among our friends to simultaneously strengthen our principles and our bonds. And that's what leads us to why we have gathered today. It's a true honor to set the scene for this discussion about the status and future of gains that Afghan women have made in the past 2 decades. And we'll focus in particular on economic empowerment and implications for peace with an extraordinary lineup today. The Atlantic Council, for its part, remains deeply committed to engaging with and supporting Afghanistan, period, and especially to support an inclusive peace process that ensures that Afghan women are seen as central to the country's future. This is a key focus of our South Asia Center's work, which is organizing today's program. So I want to give a shout out to Dr. Irfan Noureddin and his team, Harris Samad, Kaveri Sakar, who made this possible. But we're joined today by an esteemed group of speakers. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your leadership on these issues. Ambassador Kelly Currie, Ambassador at Large for Global Women's Issues in the Office of Global Women's Issues at the State Department. Her Excellency Roya Rahmani, an Ambassador of Afghanistan to the United States, who has been an outspoken voice in support of her country here. Brigadier General Kimberly Colleton, Transatlantic Division Commander of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and Connie Duckworth, Chairman and CEO Emeritus of ARZU, which I've learned means hope, and Razia John, Founder and CEO of Razia's Ray of Hope Foundation. So moderating this conversation today will be the remarkable Ambassador Paula Dobriansky, who, in addition to being a dynamic member of our board, a leader of the Atlantic Council Board, is also a senior fellow at Harvard's Belford Center, former Undersecretary of State for Global Affairs, the vice chair for our Scowcross Center for Strategy and Security, and a longtime advocate and champion for Afghanistan and Afghan women in particular. So Paula, thank you for helping to make today's possible. I know you'll recognize our other partners, but to kick off, just want to encourage all of our audience to engage in the conversation using the hashtag Progress for Afghan Women. And for those of you who are joining us directly over Zoom, you can submit your questions in the Q&A box throughout the event. But with that, I'm going to leave the floor to Paula. Over to you, please.
Thank you so much, Damon, and welcome to all. As Damon indicated, we do indeed have a very esteemed group of 5 women who have dedicated themselves to the future of Afghanistan and who are engaged in a hands-on way in advancing the kind of gains that Afghan women have made. I'm very excited about this discussion because, first, the fundamental rights of Afghan women cannot be downplayed as a negotiating issue. And as we know, right now, there are negotiations that have taken place. So this is a crucial issue. But today's topic is especially crucial because it will focus on the economic gains that have been made by Afghan women. And many of the gains, but not all, have been done also in partnership. And we're going to go through those kinds of partnerships with NGOs, with the US government, with others. I also want to thank very much the US-Afghan Women's Council for its initiative and activism here. We'll be hearing later in the conversation from Sarah Greengrass, the Executive Director of the US-Afghan Women's Council. I also want to thank the Atlantic Council, of course, and as Damon already credited, and no less the American Council on Women, Peace, and Security, and those women who are engaged in it, thanks to Charlie Ponticelli, Susan Yoshihara, among others. So let me go first, if I can. We have 5 women we're going to hear from. Let me begin with Ambassador Kelly Currie. I'd like to begin with you, Ambassador Currie, and really thank you for joining us today. As you've indicated, by modern technology, you're here with us, you're on a plane. Tell us and share with us, how have public-private initiatives in the United States, how have they supported economic development of Afghan women? How and why has it been of consequence? And have these initiatives also influenced the peace process? So welcome to you, and let's hear from you.
Well, thank you so much, Paula. First of all, it's such a pleasure to be able to be with you all today and to be able to communicate despite being somewhere over the Mediterranean right now and able to talk to you from the airplane. It's so what a time to be alive, as they say. I'm thrilled to be able to join you on a topic that is of great personal importance to me. When I was working for Paula back in the day, Ambassador Dobriansky, and Undersecretary Dobriansky, as I knew her, and we were working with the US-Afghan Women's Council, I saw firsthand how incredible it was that the council's work touched so many women in Afghanistan during such a challenging and difficult time, and really helped to bridge some of the things that we were doing at the government and policy level down to women in the grassroots and at the local level in Afghanistan. And it was such a critical development. It was one of the first public-private partnerships actually that the State Department ever launched, and was really something that set the standard for what public-private partnerships look like and how effective they can be. And so much of that is due to the energy of some of the people who are on this panel today, whether it's Paula or Connie Duckworth, and the incredible work that Connie did with Arzu and now with Turquoise Mountain, and with people like Charlie Ponicelli from our U.S. Council on Women and Peace and Security, and the great work that Charlie did when she was working with the Office of Global Women's Issues to help set up this council. And so I've been watching the work of this council for since it was founded, and it's such an honor for me to be a part of it in my current role as the Ambassador at Large for Global Women's Issues, and to be able to continue to work with this remarkable group and to help support the amazing contributions that they continue to make with helping to secure the rights and opportunities that women and girls in Afghanistan so deserve, and which have been denied for them for too long. I really want to especially emphasize that we see, the U.S. government can't do everything. I think we've learned that over the years. It's been a tough and painful lesson in some places, and Afghanistan is one of those places where we've learned really about the limits of what our foreign policy, what our development institutions, and even what our security institutions can do in a country that has been subjected to so much violence and conflict and has had such a difficult history, and where the rights of the individuals have not been respected for a period of time. And you see, especially when it comes to vulnerable communities, whether it's women or vulnerable minority communities in Afghanistan, you see that the limits of the ability of the state to deliver services, the limits of a government to function effectively, and how it harms those most vulnerable communities. And so the contributions of organizations, of civil society, of public-private partnerships, and of the private sector are critical to help meet those needs. And we're continuing to look, as we think about both the lessons learned from the US-Afghan Women's Council, the lessons learned from the past 20 years of US intervention in Afghanistan, and as we go forward with the peace processes, how do we ensure that we take the right lessons from the past 20 years, whether it's on the issue of public-private partnership or security or what the government should be doing, and how do we use those lessons to help ensure that the rights of women and girls are protected, that women and girls are able to fully participate in Afghan society and contribute to it in the way that they should be able to, and that that they're able to help drive not just peace but prosperity for the people of Afghanistan. And so we are looking, when I think about what we're doing right now with the Women's Global Development and Prosperity Initiative, WGDP, it is all about partnerships and it's all about driving private sector growth. So we think of it as really one giant public-private partnership that involves 10 U.S. government agencies and departments, including my friends in the Development Finance Corporation, DFC, our friends at USAID, our friends at the Millennium Challenge Corporation. But where we really get traction with WGDP is by leveraging the private sector to contribute. And just some of the greatest examples that we've had in the past 2 years, where we have some of America's largest and most successful companies, from Microsoft to MasterCard to Walmart to you name it, contributing their insights from their own experience, as well as looking at how WGDP can help, and how engaging through WGDP or through one of the institutions that's working with WGDP can help them to connect to new supply chains, new suppliers, empower women, create more markets for their own products by having women more economically empowered. And also, so they see this as helping their bottom line as well as the communities that they're invested in around the world. And we know this gets that multiplier effect, and that's one of the great things, that's why companies and private sectors are engaged in it too. So I'll stop there.
Right. Thank you. I wanted to make sure, because we have 4 others who are going to
Yes,
be.
I know.
In, but you gave a very, very robust
I just get so excited.
Well, you gave a very robust response to my question about these public-private initiatives and the impact they've had. But let me ask you one more question, and then I want to go on to Ambassador Romani. You know, many have been concerned recently with the deterioration of the security situation in Afghanistan, and no less the ongoing peace talks. And Afghan women have expressed concern about to what extent will they be able to preserve the very gains that they have made. How do you see that unfolding here? Do you believe that because through these public-private partnerships that connection that these women have will sustain the gains? But would you comment on that?
Absolutely. And first of all, I have to say that we unequivocally condemn the violence, especially the targeting of civilians, the targeting of women activists and women political leaders. We know what's going on here. We see you. I want to say that we are, and I want to warn those who are perpetrating this violence. You're only harming your own agenda and your reputation and your credibility with the Afghan people and with the international community, and your own standing with them by engaging in these acts of violence, this senseless and just absurd violence that targets people who are working to build a better country in Afghanistan. You're only hurting your own agenda, and any chance you have of having the respect and legitimacy that comes with governing the country will be damaged deeply by being involved in this kind of violent activity. And that is not, I think that I take to heart the words that were spoken at the beginning of the program and it's yesterday was a very sad day for our country because we saw people resorting to violence to resolve political differences, and it's a heartbreaking thing for us, and it's not who we are as a country, and it's not what our democracy is about. But it shows that this is a dangerous path, and it is a path to the ruination of a country to resort to violence to settle political differences. Unfortunately, in Afghanistan, that has been the predominant path for the past two, 3 decades. And we see what happens when that is the dominant path in a society, and how it just breaks a society. And it's a cautionary tale for all of us. And so I really think that it is important for all of the participants in the talks to deeply understand this and what the long-term consequences are. They've been living it in many ways and seeing it every day. But I think that if you want to have a different kind of future for the country, you've got to make different decisions. And you've got to prioritize not having violence as the path.
Thank you, Ambassador Curry. I really appreciate your, and as we all do, your joining on the plane. And let me go, though, to our next panelist. We are gratified that Ambassador Roya Ramani is also with us. And I want to go immediately to you and ask you the question about the issue of gains and looking at the gains that Afghan women have in fact made since the fall of the Taliban. How, in your view, has this influenced the peace and security process? Ambassador Ramani, let's hear from you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great. Greetings to you all. Very exciting to start the year with such an important panelists, a group of panelists, and also a very important subject that we are talking today about. How do I see the gains we have had has impact? Let me put it this way. The gains that women have made over the past 2 decades since the United States intervention is actually now defining what peace and security means in Afghanistan. The role of women, their gains, are the defining factor for what peace and security would mean today and would mean in the future. So a peace deal or any agreement that would prevent women from being full members of the society will never result into peace. And what impacts has it had, these gains, over these past 2 decades? Number one is that women's meaningful participation in across the various walks of life has brought the very issues related to the core of society from the private sphere to the forefront of the policy and agendas. Second, women are, it's not just a fact or a statement that they comprise half of the population. Their concerns, their views has to be incorporated for a peace deal to be full. Otherwise, a peace process, whatever it may end up to, the outcome would be a piecemeal result, which will not sustain because it is depriving the half of the society. Women's role in society, as we have seen over the past a few decades, particularly, but even before that, throughout history, it helps increase consensus building. It addresses some of the very core issues of the society, and it brings about culture of empathy and understanding, which would directly contribute to peace and security. The other aspect is that by having women meaningfully involved across the society, we are encouraging a non-militaristic approach or perspective towards finding an end to conflict. We know how militaristic approach works, and it has its own place. But for peace to find its way, we need non-militaristic approach, sustainable peace building. And women's participation has been incredibly important in these areas.
Can I ask you, Ambassador, in what ways would you say that Afghan women's economic opportunities drive peace and security? And also, let me even add in the other question, which is, how has the Afghan government worked to support women's participation in the economy? It would be good to hear from you on those issues.
Certainly. Economic empowerment of women is critical to economic development. And economic development is critical to peace and security. This is, again, another one of those known facts. So women's economic empowerment is especially important because it can increase countries' prospect for growth by altering spending patterns in ways that it would benefit the whole of society. One of the such aspects is the specific attention that women's economic empowerment would bring to healthcare and education, which in turn would increase the human capital and the capacity of the society as a whole. So it is another proven factor that when women are making wealth or having a good share of wealth, they tend to reinvest their income more into the human capital development, which is going to uplift the entire society. In Afghanistan, too, over the past decades, there has been lots of success that we have had. Currently, we have over 2,000 women entrepreneurs functioning there. And despite all the insecurity that they are facing, just yesterday, a young woman opened a new market for women to access throughout the day and opened it up for the families to get together in the evening. This is what serves the pulse of the society. This is the recognition that despite of all these challenges and insecurity, there are people living there and they continue and need to continue a normal life. How we have done so far, I think we have had great or tremendous achievements over the past 20 years. To name a few, I would just try to encompass it under one big concept that to empower women economically, we cannot specifically or only focus on women economic empowerment or projects or programs that would specifically do that. We need a more of a holistic approach because while specific initiatives or actions are necessary to do that, but we need a holistic approach from empowering women to meaningfully participate, to be in the leadership position, to be in the decision-making position, to hold a share of wealth, to the fact that provide them with certain incentive. The Afghan government has established the first women chambers of commerce and industry. They have approved a law that gives preference on our national procurements to women-based businesses. They have also contributed to a changing culture of acceptance to women by putting them in the position that they never hold before, to the number that they never were present before. Providing a space to perform and engage in public life has just opened up opportunities for Afghan women to economically get engaged, and giving women opportunities to shape and implement policies from top down by having them in decision-making position. Once again, I would like to emphasize a holistic approach is necessary. And I would like to end this part by just giving one example that if we were to only run microcredit programs, for example, to empower women economically, but all the bosses were women and all the board members were men and the big capital was in their hand, how much success we would really have. Having said that, I would like to end by one additional point, and that is, while we have had strides, there is still much room for improvement, which we need to work on and provide a more conducive culture and environment for women to function. But the international community that has helped us so much over the past 20 years also has a significant role of where we are going to go. We need our constitution to be preserved. We need our rights and voices to be preserved. We want to continue to have the right to that one vote, which would make us more invested, more heard, and a more equal member of the society to make decisions for our lives and for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. I'd like to now go to Brigadier General Kimberly Colleton. And I'm going to also ask you two questions because we have two more panelists afterwards. And then we have some questions coming in from also our viewers. So Brigadier General, As commander of the Army Corps of Engineers, the Transatlantic Division, you oversee a very broad range of infrastructure projects, including those in Afghanistan, but you also served on the ground as commander of U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Afghanistan District from 2017 to 2018. So share with us, what was it like to use your professional skills to craft specific infrastructure and to help Afghan women have the same opportunities that you've had as a US military officer? And let me combine that with also just the issue of how might, women in the US services render advice to Afghan women who are in fact working in the Afghan National Defense and Security Forces or who are applying for work there. We welcome you and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Ambassador. And if you can hear me okay, I'll just start off first by saying this has probably been one of the most personally and professionally rewarding bodies of work I've had the opportunity to get to do. And then I'll just jump back and say thank you to the Atlantic Council, the US-Afghan Women's Council, and especially the American Council on Women, Peace, and Security for inviting me to be part of this conversation today. The American Council, which launched just last year, works the bipartisan implementation of Women, Peace, and Security Act of 2017. And as you mentioned, 2017 was the first opportunity I had to be on the ground in Afghanistan. I still have a team there today, building some significant infrastructure, everything from power, distribution facilities, as well as these women-specific facilities that I'm going to highlight a few things on. So we are still connected.
Let me interject, forgive me, I apologize. Also, don't forget, I know you have some terrific slides that we also want to have our viewers take a look at as we're going along. So let us know if you want to pull up one or two of the slides.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jackson, if you want to go to the first slide, you can certainly pull that up now. I was going to say that as a woman, as a soldier, as an engineer, and over 30 years during my career working in the military and in different environments, it's been very male dominated, but I would say that both males and females alike have opened doors for me or encouraged me to open them for myself. And this working in Afghanistan has been an opportunity for me to use my skills and abilities, as you said, to, I think, hopefully open doors, for the women in Afghanistan. And it has been a cooperation and a collaboration of many teams. And I would say the efforts and our success has been because of the demonstrated power of persistent reinforcement, teamwork, and the joint commitment of over 38 countries, including the US, that comprise NATO's Resolute Support and the Combined Security Transition Command in partnership with the government of Afghanistan. And I think that teamwork, togetherness has made this happen, or made many things happen there. I would like to highlight a couple projects. The first one is up, and we've been there working on women-specific projects since 2015. We've completed 27 projects, and we have 3 significant projects still underway. They're primarily focused on providing secure living quarters and support facilities for the Afghan National Army and the Afghan National Police, the women that are members of those organizations and their families. The first one that's up right now is in Kabul, and it's an Afghan National Army barracks for the Afghan Air Force. And it has everything from officer rooms, enlisted soldier rooms, childcare, dining facility, and specific facilities so they can come and bring their children. And I think that's one of the barriers to getting women into the workforce, especially in, I think, countries like Afghanistan, is they may not have a solution for childcare. And I think being able to provide a facility that includes that in there, and you can go to the next slide if you want, Jackson, that's, I think, critically important to taking down some of those barriers to being able to participate. The second one is the Afghan Air Force University, also in Kabul. It offers barrack space. There's athletic facilities, a gym, latrines, very female-specific laundry room, and then to really provide them a space to learn, provide the children daycare, while they're attending the university. And that said, I would say there's another picture. If you go to the next one, the Army Corps of Engineers, the way we're structured, if you know how we work, we have military and civilian engineers as part of our workforce. In Afghanistan, we actually hire local nationals. There's one woman there on that team. Those are local national engineers, graduates, mostly of Kabul University and some other schools in Afghanistan. But we have one female engineer on our team, and she is leading the effort, overseeing a project that is known as Police Town, which is a space that's going to provide over 300 rooms for women and their families to be able to go and serve in the Afghan National Police Force. She's our civilian engineer overseeing the construction effort to make sure that it's quality construction, it's turned over, it has the specific requirements that we've put in the contract to ensure that what the variety of donors and investors and the users, those police women are going to have, get done. And so I'm really proud of folks like her. And I'm proud of the team that I have in Afghanistan now, which includes, men and women, but civilians and military that are working together to not only deliver these facilities, but train folks like our female engineer, Melilla, that's in the picture there. And then I guess I would just highlight the last picture, which is of a ribbon cutting and a graduation ceremony from when I was in country in 2017 of facilities at the Ministry of Interior to support the police force. And I think those young soldiers, don't look anything, those young police officers as part of the Afghan National Defense and Security Forces, make me think of how I was when I joined, nearly 30 years ago, and how important it is to have women all over to look up to have mentors that encourage you, men and women. But I think they were so happy to be able to cut the ribbon that day. Her Excellency Rulagana, she was there with, at the time, we had a senior general officer from the Combined Security Transition Authority from Afghanistan there. And I think for them to have examples like that, to see what went into building those facilities for them and to be able to provide them, that was just inspiring to me. And so I guess I would end on things I would say is be encouraged. I would tell them to continue to support and stick up for each other. And don't think that reaching for equality should be a mandate, that they should work together to get that. And even though there may seem small in numbers today, considerable progress does take time, and I've seen it in my time, but don't hesitate, make the momentum irreversible and, continue on. But I definitely think that it's very important for us to stay attached and to stay connected to those women and encourage them through examples and through things we can do to make them successful.
Brigadier General Colleton, love your enthusiasm. I was going to ask you another question, but you just answered it, and that is what core advice do you give to them? And you answered it, and so I am going to move on to our next panelist, but just thank you for what you do and really appreciate your great enthusiasm. The area and space that you work in is not one that always has gotten spotlighted, and we just appreciate the work on the ground that you've been doing. Thank you for that. Thank you. I'd now like to go to Connie Duckworth. And Connie, let me begin just by asking you first, in your case, as the head of ARZU meaning hope, how did you get involved in the first place with Afghanistan, and what inspired you to begin ARZU?
Thank you, Paula. It was in late 2001, early 2002, when the US-Afghan Women's Council, a new concept of a public-private partnership, was being first formed, that I was invited to participate as the first private sector business representative on the council. And our group made our first site visit to Kabul in January of 2003. It was absolutely freezing. That I do remember quite clearly. But it was on our return to the airport that we made a stop at a bombed out building that was sheltering literally dozens of Afghan widows and small children. And as a mother at that time of small children, I made a commitment to myself that I would find a way to create jobs for women in Afghanistan. And that was literally the start of ARZU. ARZU is a social enterprise that helps Afghan women weavers and their families break the cycle of poverty by providing them a steady income and access to education, healthcare, and sustainable community development. And I have just three slides to show. Jackson, if you could go ahead and flip through those. We operate in, and you can just move through the slides, please. We operate in rural Bamiyan province in 2 villages of Dragon Valley and Shashpul. And there we have developed weaving centers and schools for young children, and increasingly we have expanded those schools. We sell the rugs internationally. They are internationally recipients of awards. They are ethically produced, and we sell across the UK, the US, and Australia. So when I talk with my education friends on the council, I often, we get this debate about, is it jobs first or education first? And while it's a bit of chicken and the egg, I come down on the, firmly in the camp that it's jobs first. Because the first thing a woman will do when she can earn 2 cents is to help her family, lift her family up, help her neighbor next, and improve the whole community. And this is really a shift that we've seen over the last decade and a half. While we have been simultaneously meeting the basic needs of job, healthcare, and education, we've also seen a real shift in self-esteem among the women through the dignity of work. And we've also seen these same women who were illiterate, destitute women become village leaders. We hear their husbands make remarks like, I used to think my wife could only do housework. Now she's more educated than I am. She earns more income than I do. And by collecting data from the outset, we were able to quantify outcomes. And I'll just cite a few. At the 10-year mark, the rural women weavers of Bamiyan earned almost 70% more than the national average Afghan income, which included men and urban areas. 100% were literate. 50% of them owned their own homes, while most were returning refugees. And perhaps most importantly for the future of Afghanistan, 20% had at least one child studying at the university level.
Well, let me, if I can, Connie, go to what's next for ARZU. You really have shared with us where you began, how you began. What's next for ARZU, and are there any lessons learned? And then we're going to hear from Razia.
We have a very exciting future. Over the years, we had partnered on a number of occasions with Turquoise Mountain, which was founded in 2006 to revive historic areas in Kabul, traditional craft, and communities to also create jobs and a renewed sense of pride. And as the 2 leaders really in artisan training and economic empowerment through the arts, our 2 organizations decided to legally merge our efforts in order to accelerate the transformation of lives more broadly across Afghanistan through really 3 approaches: increased scale of operations, expanded sale of artisan-made product, and deeper global consumer connections. So over the last 18 months since the merger has occurred, ARZU has, all of ARZU's Bamiyan programs have been integrated into Turquoise Mountain's activities. And we have been able to secure a 25-year MOU with the governor of Bamiyan for our activities. And we have begun work on the renovation of a Silk Road era caravanserai in Shashpul that will become a center for culture and tourism, and include a carpet finishing center. But our bold plan really is to make the Bamiyan Gateway, which is the Eastern Bamiyan Valley, a driving economic force for Afghanistan, and creating a model for sustainable tourism and cultural restoration through heritage, community development, and business.
Right. Well, great. That's terrific, Connie. Really, thank you. Let me go to Razia. Razia John, I want to ask you, how did you decide in the first place to focus on education for Afghan girls? And also, from your own perspective, what have you seen as the primary gains for Afghan women and girls? Have your priorities changed during this period? And Razia, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ambassador, for having me. And thank you that, just Connie just spoke now, and I worked with her for 7 years as a international director for ARZU. And I think she is an amazing person. And I always give her the credit that what Bamiyan has become and what Ankhoi has become, she has done amazing job. Her heart and soul is in it. And while working for her after 9/11, I think I was one of the Afghans that was in a small town, and I just was so hurt what happened to Americans here and then what was happening in Afghanistan. So for me to go back, and I started going back actually January of 2002, so the first time when they allowed, after 25 years, I went there. And it was just such a disaster to see women, what they were suffering. And for me to really concentrate and see what I can do. And I'm a Rotarian for more than 20 years. And our goal is service above self. And so I decided to really, I think education was one thing that made my life, no matter what hardships I went through. But it's something that education is something that nobody can steal from you. They can steal everything. As long as you have your mind, you can go forward. And I thought that these women really need. So I chose a small, it's not a small, it's a day subs that is going to be the new Kabul, apparently. And I went to one of the villages and I started a girls' school with a lot of resistance, with a lot of backlash. But 13 years ago today, we have over 800 girls that are in my school. We have 6 graduating class. And also I built an institute next door that these girls can after high school, can go and have some kind of technical really training, because these girls are not allowed, most of them, to leave the village. So I created this amazing place for these girls, and we have over 40 girls that are midwives for the region, that there are 7 different villages. And the government has opened the clinics that were closed because there was nobody there. Because the rate of the death for a woman in that area was 40%, and a child couldn't live more than 6 months. So for them to really have the health that a woman needs. So I'm training these girls to really become, maybe tomorrow they will be ambassador and they will become maybe the president. These girls are very smart, and most of them are really so much involved in education, and they want to do the best. And my school is 100% free. It is 12 months a year. They get everything free because it's a very poor area. And my organization, we work very hard to really get donations to go forward. And we are so thankful to all over the world that are helping us to go
Razia,
forward.
if I may say, and some slides have been shown as you've been speaking of the girls in the school. So they're very, very wonderful to look at. And really, you've done a phenomenal job, as has Connie. And it's amazing the two of you had collaborated before. Such commitment. I want to ask you one of the questions, if you don't mind, that has come in from our viewers. A question has arisen about what is the role of men in supporting the advancement of Afghan women and regarding achieving, retaining rights, education, access, economic independence. Give us your view.
Yeah, I think what the men has seen in those villages that, these men couldn't read or write. And what they would have to do is really to go to 10 different places to read a little notice that they got. But now their third grader can read and write. So they don't need to go. And they are so proud of these girls. Believe me, I have about 400 girls for waiting list for kindergarten. And the list is up to 2026. A gentleman came with a name and a date of birth, which she was born in 2020, 2 months old. And he said to put her name for 2026 for kindergarten. So you can see the difference that I see, and I think it is making a great difference. 2 of my students are full scholarship in American University. One of my student is in Turkey, doing medical with full scholarship. One girl is in Lebanon. So if they are allowed, they are very bright. And my school has won the Science Medal of the Year. My 8th graders did a science project, and they got a huge telescope that they don't know how to use because they're not allowed to come at night. But I promised them that when I go back this March, I will bring them all. I have a party, and at night they can see the stars.
Well, congratulations on that. That's
I
wonderful.
think things are going very well, and this is our hope. We have to take one day at a time. And as it's said in Persian, "Qatra qatra darya mein shavad." Each drop makes a river. So we are trying to make a river and then an ocean, and these women will take over the whole Afghanistan.
By the way, there's one more question for you. Forgive me for jumping in because we only have 5 more minutes before we have closing remarks. And I also have some questions that have come in that I want to bring to Ambassador Romani. But Razia, let me ask you this briefly. A question came in. Have you gotten any global grants from Rotary to help with your schools?
Absolutely. Without my Rotaries, my school was built by my Rotary friends for me to be Rotarian. And just now we got an amazing donation from an individual that we are able to now extend the school to bring the middle school separate than the high school. So we can take 150, 1,500 students at a time.
Great, that's terrific. Thank you for that. And let me go to Ambassador Romani. There's been, I want to share one question that has come in, which is how successful is the outcome of the peace likely to be in both urban and rural areas, given tribalism and military insecurity? Would you mind commenting on that? And then let me also ask, I'm going to ask Brigadier General, there's an interesting question that's come in, and I don't know, take a stab at it. It's on infrastructure, because the question really focuses on mobility. Is it a key barrier for women's economic participation because of issues of the public transport in Afghanistan, the fact that women and girls can face harassment, there's segregated transport? I'm not sure, you'll let us know if that's something you could take a stab at. So let's see if we could get these two questions in 3 minutes. So Ambassador Rahmani, let's start with you.
Sure. So would the outcome of the peace process be successful both in the rural and urban settings? First of all, depends what that outcome is. If the outcome is something that would work, it should be practical and achievable in both settings. And what would that outcome be? That would be the outcome that would respond to the need and voices and demands of the people. The Afghan people are no different than the rest of the people and citizens in the world. They want a safe and secure life. They want education. They want employment. They want water and sanitation and healthcare. And they want freedom and liberties for their thoughts and views and ability to exercise and get promoted and have opportunities. To think that Afghanistan is really very different in the urban settings and the rural settings is a very misleading concept. Number one. Number two, not recognizing the realities of today's Afghanistan. The fact that a girl, I learned about her, that was in a remote province of Afghanistan, and due to insecurity could not attend any higher education system, but managed through the internet to follow some courses of Arizona State University. And then she got such great marks that draw attention of everybody, and they tried to find her out. And now she is studying in Arizona State University. The president of the university told me she's a star student. She was in a remote province that she could not even go due to some of the insecurities to higher education institutions. So, of course, there is still cultural norms. Still, it's not, in no country it's all the same. Nowhere is all homogeneous. We have the diversities, the differences, and we celebrate that. But the people of Afghanistan want the very same thing. They want, number one, to have a voice in who leads them and how they are governed. They want to have education. They want to have access to everything that everyone else wants. And with the changing environment all over the world, we really need to accept that.
Ambassador, thank you. Brigadier General, if you will only take 1 minute, because I do need to close to let our concluding remarks go forth. If you could give a pithy answer for not an easy question, but there you go.
I'll give a short answer. I think the question is accurate, that, access to whether it's healthcare or to the workplace, wherever they're going to work, absolutely is a concern. And I think that just goes to having a holistic plan and with depth to it to support the country, that involves where do we place these facilities, whether they are police stations or medical clinics, and how do we allow people, women and their children, to get there. I know we've worked on roads. We currently collaboratively are working, the U.S. with USAID and Asian Development Bank on power distribution. Obviously, that's another thing, is to be able to provide power, to provide, fuel to turn on all the facilities, that would enable families. But I would say that, yes, it's absolutely accurate. It just means that we have to be thoughtful in what we build and where we build it, and then think all the way through how we get people to where they need to be to go to work.
Thank
So,
you.
yes, it's a good question. Don't have a big solution, but absolutely it's a real issue.
Thank you. I'm glad that we were able to get in some of the questions from our viewers. Sorry for those who have come in with questions that we didn't get to. Before I turn it over to Sarah Greengrass, who's the Executive Director of the US-Afghan Women's Council, I just personally want to say, because she's going to close us out, I want to say thank you so much to Connie Duckworth, to Razia John, to Ambassador Roya Ramani, to Brigadier General Kimberly Colleton, and to Ambassador Kelly Curry. All of you have done phenomenal work. You're dedicated, and really your voice and your work has made a difference. And the partnering here with Afghan women, I think, has been essential. So it now gives me great pleasure to ask Sarah Greengrass, who's the Executive Director of the US-Afghan Women's Council. She's going to make not only concluding remarks, but close this session out precisely at 2 o'clock. So you have 3 minutes. Sarah, over to you, and thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah Greengrass, and as Ambassador Dobryansky said, I'm the Executive Director of the US-Afghan Women's Council. I want to say thank you to all of our speakers and to the Atlantic Council and to our partners at the American Council on Women, Peace, and Security for their participation and partnership in this event today. As Ambassador Kerry noted, the US-Afghan Women's Council is a public-private partnership dedicated to the advancement of women and girls raising their voices and advancing programs and public-private partnerships in Afghanistan and here in the United States in education, health, leadership, leadership and peace and security. And if you look at our website, you can learn more about us. We have a series of events, and this is the first in this series with the Atlantic Council and the American Council where you will hear about the gains that women have made in Afghanistan. As Ambassador Rahmani said, the gains of women are a defining factor of what peace and security means in Afghanistan today. As peace negotiations happen and as we see the increase of violence, it's important to remember that those gains are essential and that there are constant and important good stories and important things coming out of Afghanistan due to the engagement of individuals like General Colleton. It is indeed important to lay the groundwork so that women are able to enter the workforce and remain there. And those gains we have seen not only for women in peace and security services in Afghanistan or women in the economy more generally through programs like those of Arzu and Turquoise Mountain, or through education like that provided by Razia's Ray of Hope, but more importantly, by listening to the Afghan women and the Afghan people, which is part of why the council, the US-Afghan Women's Council, was started, to amplify those voices. We hope very much, and I hope very much, that you have enjoyed today's discussion. Please tune in. We will have another episode of this series in February and a final in March. And feel free to reach out to us with any additional questions that you have. Again, thank you to the Atlantic Council, to all of our participants today. I cannot begin to express my appreciation, and I hope that you all have, both in Afghanistan and here in the United States, a peaceful 2021.